Hello, I'm Josephine Cashman. A woman has died in the Northern Territory quarantine facilities at Howard Springs. The Health Minister said although this death was not COVID related, it would be investigated because it was an unexpected death within a government facility. It's very tragic that an individual has passed away, and the Minister, and I do as well, send my condolences to the family and the community. And now it is with the coroner to establish the facts, not David Cole. I've been concerned about the vaccine rollout, but David Cole and others' extreme behaviour drowns out legitimate debate. Unlike David Cole and Mark McMurtry, we do not have the United Nations, big business and big government and the media behind us. It appears this is designed by them to distract us, or something much, much, much worse. The original Tribal Sovereign Federation has existed for more than 10 years, but does not publicly disclose its membership numbers. It has claimed to have registered dozens of tribal groups who declared that they never ceded sovereignty. Emails between Mr Cullen, a former One Nation MP, and the Great Australian Party has shown that he has worked closely with two of the Tribal Federation leaders, Mark McMurtry and David Cole. The pair has previously unsuccessfully advised Indigenous people facing criminal charges to argue the law does not apply to them because they were sovereign citizens. This year, it was reported that Mark McMurtry suggested on Facebook that burning down a church would be a good way for the community to get the police attention. David Cole, on 14 March 2016, told the NT News the department is a corporation, that's the NT Department of Families and Community Services, does not have jurisdiction of the sovereign tribal people. Through this argument, sovereign people of this continent are basically being forced under a system that has no jurisdiction or authority over them. The Southern Poverty Law Centre, SPLC, is an American not-for-profit legal advocacy organisation specialising in legal rights and public interest litigation. Based in Alberta, it is known for its legal cases against white supremacist groups, its classification of hate groups and other extremist organisations, and for promoting tolerance in education. They have defined the group that Mark McMurtry and David Cole in as a Freeman sovereign group, and they say that the roots of this movement are racist and anti-Semitic. It was founded by William Porter Gale, former member of the John Birch Society. Porter formed a group of anti-government identity adherents who mistrusted the state and federal officials. They believed that non-white people were not human, and that Jews possessed a satanic plot to take over the world. So in Australia, we have one of these groups, and the leaders of this group is faux Aborigines. What is more racist than this? And on Twitter, on the 23rd of July 2014, Mark McMurtry claimed that the real reason they brought down MH17 was due to the Zionist Jews. They are anti-Semitic, as David Cole recently blamed Zionist Jews for wanting to genocide Aboriginal communities. If they actually understood history, they would understand that this criminal billionaire gang, an organisation, originally came from Afghanistan. And I can post some stuff on that. Sovereign citizens believe that they are not judges, juries, law enforcement or elected officials. They should decide which laws they to obey and which to ignore. On the 3rd of November 2015, Aboriginal sovereignty movement disrupted a fraud trial in the Northern Territory, claiming that the judge, and this was Mark McMurtry and David Cole, claiming that the judge and the prosecutor were guilty of treason, claiming that the judge and the prosecutors were guilty of treason and that the offender should be released because she misused funds to protect against witchcraft. Original Sovereign Tribal Federation spokesman David Cole labelled the federal government as a corrupt identity, imposing its laws on sovereign tribal lands and has no jurisdiction over. He said that at the court. On the 2nd of May 2021, a Supreme Court application for bail in the Northern Territory for an Aboriginal man charged with 6 counts of aggravated assault and causing a serious harm in relation to an ongoing dispute between 2 families in a remote community. On the bail application, the Crown Prosecutor, Malone, tendered a statutory declaration from a senior police sergeant requesting that the court order the accused has no contact with prominent Aboriginal, not sure, activist David Cole. In the history of pseudo-law, David Cole and Mark McMurtry was named as Freeman style. So they're named as being part of this extremist group in the world. And they describe them as notice of rebuttal of claim to land title and land rights used by Aborigines to exert extraordinary land claims. So this is the top academic article which has mentioned Mark McMurtry. Now, with these sovereign groups, most of the recruits are targeted. They target people who have found themselves in desperate situation in a search for a quick fix. Now, this is the case with Aboriginal people. Aboriginal people are vulnerable. The government has caused it. Let me give you a quick history of some of the events. There is unelected Aboriginal leadership group which governments, institutions, the media and the corporation regularly consult with in regards to Aboriginal affairs. This group has dismally failed Aboriginal people for decades. There have been numerous parliamentary inquiries which have achieved little. The money spent on public servants, failed experiments and consultancies should have earned specific measurable results by now. The Keating government did not bother to consult with Aboriginal people or the broader Australian community around the Mabo and native title. Within weeks of the Mabo judgment, Robert Tickner was over at the United Nations declaring our future. And this is a quote from a Foreign Affairs book, which is on the website, the Foreign Affairs Department website. In Geneva, only a few weeks after the High Court decision was handed down, the Minister for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Affairs, Robert Tickner, passed copies of the decision to the UN Working Group on Indigenous Populations. Prime Minister Paul Keating consulted only with 5 Aboriginal people he trusted: Loris O'Donoghue, Noel Pearson, Solly Blair, Marcia Langton and David Ross on the native title legislation. The native title legislation was meant to provide a system for recognition and protection of native title and for it to coexist with the National Land Management Scheme. It sounded good, but from an economic perspective, it is a failure. Native title has provided Aboriginal Australians with no independence. The Act has been poorly drafted and has removed all the useful functions. Native title is a non-transferable and therefore land cannot be sold or mortgaged. It is unclear about ownership, geographic extent and conferred rights. It has proven useless to Aboriginal people and a nightmare for investors because of the uncertainty. Only big business and big business and big government can deal with it. So they're happy, obviously. It has cost our nation productivity opportunities, and native title is controlled by Aboriginal organisations which do not offer individuals land shares or and property rights. It has proven useless to Aboriginal people and has prevented them from achieving economic independence. These organisations encourage dependence on social housing, which is problematic because Australian social housing rules prevent tenants from gaining independence because rent is increased dramatically when tenants work. Thus, the rules do not encourage enterprise and stifles home ownership. Unlike other countries, Australia has no shared equity schemes for renters in the social housing system, or if they do, they're not broad. Tom Calma, former Social Justice Commissioner and co-chair of Ken White's Voice, said native title is at the bottom of the hierarchy of Australian property rights. The federal government is funding David Cole with hundreds of thousands of dollars through his foundation, campaigning for at-risk children. The foundation, which received more than $500,000 in government just alone in Commonwealth funding for the 2019 to 2020 financial years, provides a range of services, camps and programs for hundreds of Territory at-risk youth each year. Now, if that doesn't ring alarm bells, to have an extremist group involved with at-risk children, it's bad enough they're involved with Aboriginal people pretending to be Aboriginal and to speak on behalf of everybody, plus they get money from the government. Financial records show that the government, including grants, has made up anywhere between 80 to 90% of the organisation's incomes in recent years, meaning they get a lot of money from government. And they're connected to other people. In July 2016, Bill Shorten met with David Cole when he went to Darwin. Bill Shorten said he would be doing what Mr Turnbull had failed to do, listening to the views of relevant parties. David Cole, of course, he told the Weekend Australian, if we don't listen to experts, advocates and community, we'll just be repeating the failures of the past. Well, Labor hasn't done anything to help us at all. On the 6th of February 2016, David Cole headed for Canberra, and he said, our approaches for kids struggling with crime, suicide and identity crises is only thing reaching them. Mr Cole said he contacted the Prime Minister's office on Monday. I told them we would be coming on Thursday or Friday, he said. He obviously met with Julia Gillard, no doubt. It's known in the world that these sovereign citizens groups have turned to violence when a sovereign feels particularly desperate, angry, battle-weary and cornered. And the resulting rage can be lethal. Mark McMurtry has been to the UN so many times, supported by the government. And David Cole gets money. And they're connected to the UN. And Ricardo Bossi talks about sovereignty all the time. And so does this other former One Nation candidate. The question is, why are they being supported by these so-called public figures and the government? That's the question.